The AVPro Edge EX70 444 RNE is a 4K 60 444 HDR and 18 gigabit per second HD-based T receiver that's built to work with the AVPro Edge HD-based T matrix switchers. Its slim design and rich features make this small unit the perfect solution for HDR distribution. Using category cable, you're able to distribute an 18 gigabit per second up to 70 meters, all while utilizing ICT or invisible compression technology, which allows us to deliver a virtually lossless, high bandwidth 4K HDR signal with support for all signals up to 18 gigabits per second. Deep color and HDR metadata remain intact while making the image free of artifacts like banding. On top of being an HD-based T receiver, the EX70 444 RNE also supports IR and RS-232 extension, audio return channel, and has built-in test patterns for troubleshooting. Let's take a look at the installation. Thanks for checking out this training module on the AVPro Edge EX70 444 RNE. This is an HD-based T receiver that's designed to pair up with any of the AVPro Edge HDMI/HD-based T matrix switches. As far as the installation goes, we're using a signal generator as our source. That's connected to the AVPro Edge 4x4 HD-based T switch with an HDMI cable. And then output number 1 from the switch is connected to the receiver itself with your Ethernet or your HD-based T link. This will power the receiver. If you do want to power the receiver with a power supply, you can certainly do that. There's a 48-volt power connector right here. Just make sure if you're going to power the receiver itself that you flip the PoE switch from TX to RX. Now, since we are getting power from the transmitter, aka the HD-based T switch, we're going to leave this in the TX PoE mode and go ahead and plug it back in for power. One useful feature of this kit is we're able to extract the audio and separate it from the video signal. You'll notice that there's a left and right audio output right here next to the HDMI connection. So we're going to take a 3-pin Phoenix connector, and we're going to make an audio cable. And now we can pull the audio from the video in 2-channel analog. Just be sure if you do this, your source is set to 2-channel PCM, or you might not get the right audio signal. Another thing we can do is send control signals through RS-232. So on the top of the unit, next to the HD-based T connection, there is a 3-pin RS-232 cable. So we'll go ahead and plug in the cable. And now we have a serial connection here if we need it. The next thing we'll take a look at is the IR routing. So for example, if you needed to send IR signals from the display into the rack to maybe change volume on the AVR, press play on the Blu-ray, whatever you need to do, we can certainly do that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to plug the IR receiver into the input of the receiver. And this IR receiver will now go somewhere on or near the TV so you can aim the remote at it. Now what we would do on this side, on the back of the matrix switch, there's an IR output that will plug the emitter into. Now this emitter can go on any device that I want to control. Again, could be a Blu-ray player, could be an AVR, anything that I want to control with an infrared remote, I can send from the display back through this HD-based T system into the rack, and then I can control the device I want to control. Now we can also control the TV from the rack. So things like power, volume, things like that. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to plug the IR receiver into the input on the matrix switch. And this IR receiver can now be mounted somewhere in the rack. Now we're going to take the IR emitter, we're going to plug that into the IR output on the RNE. And now we can put the emitter on or near the TV to control the TV. The next thing we'll take a look at is the internal test pattern generator. This can be very helpful if you need to test the link between the receiver itself and the display, and anything in between. So to activate the internal test pattern generator, go ahead and unplug the power, press and hold the setting button, which is next to the 48 volt power connector, and go ahead and plug power back in. Wait a few seconds, and now we have a test pattern on the screen. The first test pattern is 1080p, and when you press the setting button one more time, we get the same test pattern in 4K. So you can test 1080p signals and 4K signals in between the receiver and the display. To exit test pattern mode, unplug power, and go ahead and plug it back in. There is a USB connection here that's just for firmware updates, nothing that you would normally have to worry about in the field. If we take a look at some of the status lights here, on the HDMI output, there's a status light that should always be blue. That means there's a solid connection between the receiver and the display with HDMI. On the other side, we have a solid red power light, and as long as the unit's getting power, that should always be solid red. Again, that could be either from HD-based because this is PoE, PoH, or if you power with the 48 volt power supply. Either way, power light should be solid red all the time. Around the HD-based connection, you'll see a flashing orange light, which should always flash orange, and a solid green light. That means we have power coming through the HD-based and we have a solid connection between the transmitter, which in this case is the switch, and this receiver. That'll do it for the AVPro Edge EX70 444 RNE. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions about installation or any of the features that we spoke about today, or if you run into any problems during your installation, feel free to give us a call, 605-274-6055. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.